1 in the afternoon after lunch. I'm not sure whether this is good or bad. I'm going to talk about networking and OpenStack. And yeah, we've got a booth down there, and we've been challenged a bit. It's, hey, what about OpenStack and networking? Because for us, the network is just kind of the underlay which needs to run. So I kind of challenge the community, and I kind of put it up in such a respect to say, well, you require networking, or OpenStack requires disaggregation. I'd like to tell you what exactly do we mean with disaggregation, and why is that so important for the community, and how does it help you generate good solutions and create good solutions on it. I'm Andi Falkner. I'm heading up the Dell networking division for EMEA. And I'm gonna guide you through what we think is important for OpenStack to kind of being part of it. Now, if we look at the key characteristics, and this is not something which we just brought up, obviously, you know, it's kind of, if you look into what is kind of the key characteristics and the key requirement, have been defined back in the 2011 in a critical analysis of cloud computing. Yeah, it wouldn't surprise you that one of the first characteristics, obviously, regarding OpenStack is you have to be open, stated by the name, which basically comes up. It has to be open in the sense that DevOps developers are able to port their solutions and be flexible enough to configure and to develop on top of an existing infrastructure. Okay, openness is key. The second one, obviously, is flexibility, and we're all asking about compatibility, flexibility. What you don't want to have at all is any lock-in situation. So any virtualized environment you're using, any virtualization tools, you have to be flexible, you have to support it, and you have to make sure that if you're moving, going back to the first instance, if you're moving it from one instance to the other, you're not stuck anymore. So again, one of the three key characteristics being that flexibility and support all the different major virtualization layers and hypervisors going forward. And then obviously, and the key characteristic is as we're moving in an infrastructure, we have to scale not only from the perspective of applications, but also from the physical layout, and have to make sure that we're not stuck with a decision once made, and we don't have to revise our architecture once it's made. Right? These are OpenStack. These are OpenStack characteristics. And now, if I want to kind of port them and kind of check feasibility from a networking perspective, I don't see that networking being the underlay and the most critical part in an infrastructure new solution is really giving it. Traditional networking is anything but open. Within traditional networking, you get your networking devices, you get your networking switches or routers. The routers are tied to the software. The software again is tied to the capabilities and the strategy of the company, and you have no development interfaces into it. So within traditional networking, the openness is currently not given. So for me, this is a clear no-go. Now, flexibility and compatibility, we'll have to look, and I think we did evolve going forward here in our solution set, because there are a lot of network virtualized overlay solutions going along with it who do support all the different virtualization layers. Some of them are a bit proprietary. If we take VMware OpenStack integration is not given at all times. So for us, this is something we have to be cautious, but I think we have to be very clear that we're working on it. And the last part, obviously, the scalability. For me, this is a clear goal, because for me, scalability is part of the nature of the architecture. If we're talking about modern architectures in the OpenStack environment, the base of it is always a spine-leaf fabric architecture, which is fully scalable, which is fully interoperable between different vendors. So you do have the scalability in that respect, that you can use hardware equipment from different vendors, and you grow it as you're adding more compute or more applications and more workloads to it. So, from a networking perspective, I think there is a bit of work to be done, and we have to look at it. And hence my my remark, we require disaggregation. Now what does that mean? What does really the disaggregation part mean? Because it does address basically the first two aspects, which do not get the green tick from my side. So our vision and strategy is networking has to be open. The networking equipment, just like the compute, just like the storage side, has to be open and has to be based on the community. So the community is basically driving through the workloads the development and the speeds and the features and functionalities of the underlying hardware. You can only maintain innovation if you are using the full community in order to develop on top of it. And you're not only making the use of your own resources, but making sure that the community is adopting your vision and the strategy. At the end, obviously, it will all lead to some sort of CapEx, OpEx savings, but the disaggregated model is, for us, the only way to go forward. And this has been something which is not new in the industry, because disaggregation is part of every compute, is part of every storage, is part of most of the architectures, but it never really brought in or kicked in networking. So as a net benefit, disaggregation, what does it give you as customers? It's going to give you the choice, and it's going to give you the flexibility to move and to adapt your technologies as an underlay in regards to your specific requirements. And let me kind of get more into that choice and flexibility part. What we have invented and what we've been kind of brought forward is a technology and a marketing vision which is called open networking. Have you heard about open networking before? Because we've been talking about this for a while now. Now, if we take a look at how the market perceives, Gartner clearly states that within 2021, over 20% of the market is going to be based on open networking. So open networking basically tries to shift the paradigm of a traditional networking philosophy into an open source community-based approach. Networking has always been very inefficient in such a way that you had to buy your networking switches, your routers, your devices, and by buying the hardware, you'd have to take what the vendor is going to serve you with it, which is kind of the software on top of it. To be very blunt, a Cisco switch only runs with Cisco IUS. A Juniper switch only runs with Junos. But why is that? Why would you need to be kind of locked into a technology which, going back to what I stated before, is anything but an open community, because you would always rely on the capabilities of the vendor to kind of integrate, adapt new features, functionalities which you would need in order to scale up and scale horizontally up as well, to make sure that your specific architectures are being adopted. So what we have seen in networking actually is a lot and a strong notion on proprietary solutions, proprietary protocols, proprietary architectures, proprietary technologies coming forward, built on dedicated ASICs, only by a specific vendor. Anything but heterogeneous, anything which is kind of helping and fueling our open source idea and philosophy. A change in the market has been kind of adopted around 5-6 years ago, when on-demand manufactured ASICs kind of reached the market. Companies like Broadcom, like QLogic, Intel are bringing out ASICs which are up to speed, just like any other hardware components from the incumbent vendors. So suddenly you do get the proprietary ASIC part. You do get an open and a community which is able to provide you an alternative in your solution. And this is when open networking started off, because we are today stepping away from the proprietary software, hardware, and architectures. We're giving it a spin that we're able to use ASICs from different hardware vendors in our components. And these components range from traditional 1 gig devices to up to 100 gig or 200 gig devices in the future. But you can use on-demand manufactured general available ASICs and chipsets on the market to kind of fuel that shifting in the paradigm. Now, the hardware set is one part. How about the software? The software part, and again, I mentioned in my slide before, it's all about giving you choice. Why do I, and again, this is where we want to break, and we want to break the paradigm is, why do I have to ship a hardware with an existing software on it? Given in the OpenStack community, we've got a strong Linux notion on it. Any switch, any router out there in the market usually has to be configured via CLI. So you cannot leverage the skills you get from the Linux community to kind of manage your networking underlay. But why is that? Now we're breaking the paradigm and saying yes, there is a way to kind of run a Linux operating system on top of it. Actually, just after this session, Cumulus, one of our partners, is gonna elaborate on the scalability of Cumulus in a cloud environment. So you can run a Linux operating system on the switch with Cumulus Linux. And this is just one example to kind of come up and say, well, we've got that use case. You can use a traditional operating system, but you can use a Linux operating system. It all requires, OpenStack requires the split of control plane and forwarding plane. So you want to embrace the software-defined networking idea. You want to make sure that network virtualization and automation kicks in through software-defined architectures. Why do you have to use a built-in architecture if you can have a choice of different? And we're giving you a choice through Big Switch to make sure that you can build a fabric on software-defined architectures running on a commodity switch. So, you know, that basically spins the business agility. You'll get an innovation because you're talking with multiple vendors here. And obviously it does protect your investment because you're using state-of-the-art technology in your infrastructure. So this is what we're building in, as open networking, and for us, delivering that choice obviously is part of the DNA, and this is where we want to see the whole OpenStack community move to. And we've got multiple of these choices going forward. I talked about Cumulus Linux, Cumulus Networks, Linux on the switch. We're supporting Big Switch, providing us SDN fabrics and tapping solutions. And we've got dedicated software for virtualized centric and analytics tools for our fabrics. On top of that, you can have classical wide area networking solution set and a traditional networking operating system. So we're disaggregating the hardware from the software layer. So this was a step one within the disaggregation strategy and vision of us, and this is how you can be different and how you can leverage that open idea going forward. So open networking is the step one. Now, we're disaggregating software from hardware. I think that it makes sense. We've got a number of got good use cases, reference customers going on it. But we've been taking the whole idea actually to the next step, and we said, now, how about the software itself? Because I put myself on the spot here saying, well, you want to develop on top of the software architecture. Still, the software itself, an operating system, is a closed environment, and it is nothing that the development community can access and can build their applications or their specific workloads on top of it. And here is where we're taking disaggregation to the next level with our new operating system called OS 10. So let me kind of show you where OS 10 basically kicks in. We are moving from the strategic traditional platforms into the highly virtualized environments in a classic spine leaf fabric architecture. And on top of that architecture, you need an orchestration layer from a different kind. This can be OpenStack and can be Nuage networks. We're having, especially in the OpenStack community, we're working closely together with Midokura. VMware NSX is a solution here. But you'll see we'll have the traditional network set up with the hardware aggregation, disaggregation, and now we're basing it on the platform-free architectures on top of it. Where OS 10, the new operating system, basically kicks in, is in its modularity and it's the way it's been containerized and set up in order to make sure it recognizes DevOps requirements and it achieves development agility. First of all, I was talking about the need for us to be scalable in my second slide in regards to new architectures and new chipsets coming up. What's really hard these days is to build an operating system and basically integrate and find an interface how to be agile enough to integrate a new ASIC which is coming up or which basically delivers and gives you future capabilities into your operating system. With OS 10, we're absolutely flexible to cover that part into the underlay through our software abstraction interface. So we're able to, whoever is kind of coming up with a new chipset, with a new ASIC, we're very easily are capable of integrating them into a new switched hardware platform. So that is basically the first major advantage of an operating system, making sure the innovation and the scalability moving on, we're not kind of locked down to an existing technology. Making sure, all of you are most likely familiar with what Broadcom is doing, but have you ever heard of Barefoot? Barefoot is now an innovator in the 100 gig space. Intel obviously being out there, they're now building ASICs dedicated for networking. But we want to make sure that whatever those guys on the chipset layer are providing us, we're able to integrate and capable to kind of deliver on it. So you have an operating system who is disaggregating and who's making sure that the chipset layer has been fully flexible covered. On the other hand, you want to make sure that your workloads and your applications which are being developed on top of a switch which is fully modular. And we're shipping our, and we're developed OS 10 in such a way that you'll get it in two versions. One is the Open Edition. Open Edition meaning you just get the kernel. You just get a Debian Linux-based kernel, and within that kernel, you're fully free and fully capable through an interface to develop on top of it. So the switch runs with bare minimum features and functionalities, because we stripped away the whole legacy traditional networking scopes, and we're shipping it only with a kernel to make sure that it does what it should do, just plain forwarding, and all the features and functionalities can be developed on top of it through an interface. That is a free of charge. We've donated that part into the Open Switch community. We're actually heading up the OPX Linux Foundation community because we want to make sure, our belief is that this is going to be the future. We don't want to kind of lock in our customers in our own operating systems, and hence what you'll see on the left-hand side here, we have a full modular free of charge version as a kernel only, and I'll show you the architecture in a minute, which is donated to the OPX community. Then the second part is kind of the Enterprise Edition. The Enterprise Edition delivering traditional networking capabilities. Whatever you need is as layer 2, layer 3 features, functionalities. So if you want to have the beauty of a hardware disaggregation, running an operating system on top of any of those chipset vendors' hardware, which give you specific capabilities, you can use traditional networking on top of it with the Enterprise Edition. Hence, it's not only the hardware disaggregation, it is the disaggregation within the software, which keeps the open source, OpenStack community fully flexible in deriving their needs. Now, kind of a consumption model and a way to position it is, in our traditional open hardware, we'll provide the choice of different operating systems based on network virtualization capabilities and applications. OS 10 Open Edition, as I mentioned, is free of charge for DevOps environments to develop on a Debian Linux kernel. And then the Enterprise Edition is kind of the traditional enterprise layer 2, layer 3 stack. Now, how do we derive this, and what is kind of the base of it all? For us, it is the kernel, which is part of the Open Edition, and we've identified actually 3 abstraction layers in order to achieve the flexibility we've just been talking about. The first one is the Linux adaptation layer, which basically gives me full access to the Linux kernel. So I can use any Linux management and orchestration tool to run and to orchestrate and basically use automation capabilities to run on my network. The second one is the network abstraction layer. The network abstraction layer kind of being the northbound interface, and then the platform abstraction layer, which is giving me the capability of integrating the different chipset hardware from the different hardware vendors. So I've got these 3 abstraction layers, which we've integrated in what we call the control plane services, CPS. One interface to kind of be steered. And this one interface is kind of the interface for all developers to make use of a fully disaggregated software for you to be basically fueling your workloads on top of it. So how would that look like? So you will get the switch with our Open Edition, and you would be able to use any open source routing, switching routing protocol from the Linux community in order to derive layer 2, layer 3 functionalities on Open Edition. You can use any known and familiar orchestration and automation tools like Puppet, Chef, Nagios, Ansible on it. So basically, it is kind of the build it on your own task, right? All you get is a switch with a hardware, which is innovative, going from 1 gigabit to 100 gigabit Ethernet, 200, 400 gigabit in the future. So we're driving this on the customs ASIC set, and we're making sure that we're basing it on state-of-the-art technology. The Open Edition is free of charge, but the Enterprise Edition is, as I mentioned, the traditional part. So if you need L2 features, VLANs, if you need routing capabilities, if you say, well, in my OpenStack solution set, the network is just the communications enabler and transporting my packets, the Enterprise Edition is going to go forward, because in here you've got all the traditional networking features and functionalities you need in order to derive your solution set. It's got the orchestration layer with traditional CLI, SNMP, REST APIs attached in, but you're still able, basically, to use Linux automation tools via the Linux adaptation layer to kind of get to the Linux kernel. So these are the 2 versions for us, and as being a key part, obviously we do support, and we have embedded a huge automation framework, which is the state-of-the-art in the community, both northbound, with the standard ones in the Enterprise Edition, but you know, the further we move to the right here, you'll find automation tools like Ansible, Puppet, OpenConfig, which is state-of-the-art for you to kind of make sure the integration works smoothly from an OpenStack solution set into the operating system for the switches. So this is what we understand as software disaggregation. We've disaggregated the hardware, we've disaggregated the software, and this is giving you the choice and the flexibility of it. Now, let me give you one of the examples in the last 5 minutes of how we do integrate OpenStack in an existing traditional networking environment. And here the integration with Big Switch is kind of one of the examples. Last year at this show we showed this basically being turned alive with Verizon in an OpenStack environment. The base of it all is always the fabric. The fabric running on both a physical switch or a virtual switch. And the fabric is being managed by a controller called the Big Switch controller. You will see on the Big Cloud Fabric controller on the left-hand side. Basically, you'll have the full idea of a software-defined enclosure. control plane and forwarding plane is completely segregated, is completely diversified. All the decisions are being made on the controller, and all the existing switches are being steered and controlled via one instance, which obviously for resiliency you'll get on in a redundant mode. The OpenStack integration is done via an interface and via a plugin on the top side. But what we also have just innovated is we'll get a switch-like virtual component on our virtual switch in order to make sure that integration takes place even for the virtual workloads where the workloads do appear. So how does that work and how does that kind of integrate? We do have a dedicated orchestration interface plugin in Neutron in the big cloud fabric controller. So you see, the beauty is you don't have to manage, you don't have to kind of orchestrate and plan on all your devices throughout the network, throughout the fabric. You've got one place of control. There is one controller you need to kind of get to, which is the big cloud fabric controller. That Neutron plugin gives you a single programmatic interface. That is your interface between the OpenStack world and the underlying hardware and the underlying network. And the whole configuration and orchestration for the physical, P, and the virtual side will be done solely by the controller space. And hence we'll have the full virtualized environment and the resiliency within the cloud controller. What that gives you is not only an integration of physical and virtual, kind of a mixture of physical and virtual switching and networking devices, but we're also giving you and providing, through the controller functionality, visibility in what is going on in the network. You'll see directly on the controller, you get the analysis, which will help you to drive out the analytics of the network, but also in case of troubleshooting, in case of something is wrong, something is broken, the controller gives you all that visibility and analytics in order to drive it forward. Okay? Now, here is kind of the PNV fabric, and the final integration part actually we're doing from an integration perspective into OpenStack is either via an ML2 plugin, which basically is allocates the VLAN tags and drives the segmentation into the physical fabric, and also into the corresponding switches. So this is basically the Neutron ML2 plugin. And alternatively, as an option B, we've got a direct Neutron plugin on the controller side, which basically describes the case I've mentioned before. And that basically concludes my presentation to you. We think, as Dell, OpenStack requires and deserves disaggregation. Disaggregation on the hardware side. You don't want to be locked in from a hardware perspective, and you don't want to be locked in terms of which kind of hardware ASICs you're using, which are blocking you from future innovation. You don't want to be locked in from a software perspective, because there are capabilities to have a fully containerized modular software with OS 10 on it. And this is what we're trying to do. We're trying to disrupt the industry by making sure this is going to come to the market. Gartner thinks this is the right way to go, so we're going to proceed with it. We're at the booth downstairs, so there's a team of Dell networking people. Please join us in. We'll show you. We've got one of the switches down here, so we can show you. And I'd urge you to kind of join one of the Cumulus sessions, which is just after this one, because Cumulus is going to talk to you about how disaggregation is going to turn live with Linux networking. Thank you very much.